Hi, my name is Melissa Hartwig Urban. I'm the Whole30 co-founder and CEO, a 6-time New York Times bestselling author. I've added a couple books. And I'm also a drug addict with almost 20 years of recovery. Here is my story. In 2000, after leaving rehab for the last time, I realized I had to change everything about my life in order to maintain my recovery. So I joined a gym. I met a group of women who loved to run. I started doing half marathons and triathlons, and I started eating healthy, lots of whole grains and low-fat dairy. In 2006, I found CrossFit, and I became so obsessed with the value of CrossFit for me, not the exercise modality, but the power of the CrossFit community. Finally, I could belong to this enormous group of well-connected people who were so passionate about improving their health and fitness. So I dove into CrossFit hard. I became very active on the CrossFit message boards, a precursor to social media. I created a CrossFit training blog. I wrote for the CrossFit Journal. I started traveling, teaching CrossFit kettlebell certifications. And in 2007, I opened my first CrossFit gym in New Hampshire. In 2009, after a really difficult Olympic lifting session, I was sitting around on the floor of CrossFit Boston eating Thin Mints right out of the sleeve because I had just exercised and I had earned them. A friend proposed a squeaky clean 30-day dietary experiment based on the framework of a paleo diet. Always up for a challenge, I took him up on it, and that began what was to become the very first Whole30. Those next 30 days were profoundly transformational for me. My energy, sleep, mood, performance in the gym, recovery, all skyrocketed. But the most important part for me was that this experiment showed me all the ways I was using food like I used to use drugs. As punishment, reward, to relieve anxiety, to self-soothe, to show myself love. At the end of those 30 days, I felt like I had finally learned new habits and new coping strategies to sit with my feelings, and I was finally able to get off the scale and out of the mirror. I decided to share my experience on my CrossFit training blog, and a few hundred people expressed an interest in following along. So I typed up a very rudimentary set of rules and guided people through the first group Whole30 in July 2009 in the comments section of my blog spot. CrossFit was incredibly well connected online, and the word of mouth about the Whole30 grew rapidly. So we began getting invitations to various CrossFit gyms all across the country to go talk about the Whole30 and our approach to nutrition. So 3 weekends out of a month, for the next 2 years, we would travel to various CrossFit gyms, talking to 25, 30, 50 people at a time. At this point, we had a website and we had a Facebook page and had garnered enough loyalty and enough interest to earn the attention of a publisher. In 2012, the first book, It Starts With Food, was published. It went on to become a New York Times bestseller a few months later and started to earn the attention of national media. This was also around the time that our Instagram account took off, and I believe right around 2013 was when we accumulated 1 million photos hashtagged Whole30 on Instagram. Things really took off in 2015 with the publication of our flagship book, The Whole30, which has gone on to sell 1.5 million copies in North America and has been translated into about 12 languages. That was my first Dr. Oz appearance. That was my first #1 New York Times bestseller. Over the course of the next 3 years, I would go on to write 5 more Whole30 books in very quick succession, each one a New York Times bestseller. We entered into partnerships with Applegate, Chipotle, Walmart. I spoke at Target and Amazon and Starbucks and Google, and it felt like Whole30 had become a household name. Today, I feel like we are just getting started. The Whole30 combined fan and follower count now tallies more than 4 million. I launched a podcast in April, which recently hit 1 million downloads. We entered into a partnership with the ASPCA, making us the first non-vegan dietary program with established animal welfare standards, and just got Walmart to agree to those standards for our great value frozen meals. And the next book, Whole30 Friends and Family, comes out in October 2019. I would love to say that I could take credit for the trajectory and growth and power of Whole30 and the brand. But I've said it before and I'll say it again, every good idea I've ever had has come as a result of listening to my community. I don't do anything. I don't do a sponsorship or a product placement, a partnership, a project, or a speaking engagement unless I feel like it's in service of them. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today, harnessing the power of community, building an authentic brand, and creating a movement. So with that, let's start the discussion.
I mean, who here has heard of or attempted the Whole30? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, almost the whole place.
I like it.
It's great. And your community is massive. It's in the millions.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that interests me the most as someone who cares about brand is how you created this community of people. And you said that it started with you writing about your own experience.
Yeah.
How did that kind of, I don't know, drive readership, I guess?
You know, I gave basically everything away for free for about 3 years. And I devoted a lot of time and energy into sharing my thoughts with the community through my blog, my advice, my own experience, my own learnings. I shared like mistakes I had made. There was one story where I was gonna travel with Jeff Martone to teach the CrossFit kettlebell certs. And it was like a dream job for me at the time. And he said to me before one of our sessions, I am embarrassed to have my wife look at your blog because you swear so much in it, Melissa. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's right. So I created the Maureen Martone rule, where from now on, if I wouldn't, let Maureen read my blog, it wasn't something I was going to write. But I shared that whole experience with my audience. So I wasn't just talking about the highlights.
Yeah.
I was really, I feel like, trying to be authentic in my own life and sharing pieces of me with people. And I think that's what people related to.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think that's why so many people participate, care about, pay attention to the Whole30, because you are authentic, right? Your own personal story, it allows all of us to feel like we can be okay taking part in something that might be really challenging for us.
Yeah, one thing I figured out really early on was that I felt for a very long time I had this alter ego. I called her Whole30 Melissa, and
Yeah.
Whole30 Melissa was like super prim, super proper, always ate perfectly, always presented herself perfectly, like didn't make any mistakes, because I felt like that was what my community needed of me, that they needed me to be this like beacon of perfection, Whole30 perfection. And what I realized was that A, I had become completely unrelatable.
Yep.
And then B, I felt like I couldn't live up to my own image. I was like an imposter in my own life. I had crafted this like perfect Whole30 Melissa that wasn't me. And so it made me feel very insecure. It made me feel like an imposter. It made me feel unqualified. And then I feel like it created so much distance because I didn't want to really truly connect with you, because I didn't want you to find out that I wasn't actually perfect. So once I realized that, and it happened in the middle of a workshop where I broke down in tears and thought like, I can't do this anymore. Once I realized that and started showing up as myself, everything I think got so much better and easier.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that actually really plays into the community trusting you, because you're real, right? Because you are very honest about yourself. And that can be something that we all can learn in maintaining a brand and building a brand. If we're just, if we're marketing and we're sales and we're just reading a script, and we're not being true and honest in what we're communicating or saying, I mean, people are smart. They pick up on that.
People are very smart. In the early days of social media, you could get away with a lot. You could get away with being an influencer without disclosing that it was an ad or sponsored content. You could get away with image crafting your entire life. Now I feel like people are a lot more savvy about that. And the majority of interaction we have with our community is done online. And I think because people are a little bit smarter, I think because they have so many options and choices. So if they're not looking to you for advice, there are like a million other people who are doing what you do. So why are they coming back to you? There has to be that personal connection. And you'll hear words like authenticity, vulnerability, empathy, connection, but honestly, you are building a relationship, and it's the kind of thing that takes a lot of time. It takes, it's a very long process, and like you have to build a lot of trust in between, but it can be lost like that. So that's something that I always keep in mind when I'm thinking about where we're gonna go as a brand, is like we've built so much goodwill with the community. I'm not willing to take a step that's gonna erode that potentially.
Right. Yeah. If you were to talk to a company that was getting started, and they're like, we want to do this right, we want to be honest, are there some key factors or values that you kind of hold true that you could share with them?
Yeah, it's been a little bit maybe easier for us, and that Whole30 has always just had one voice. It's always just been my voice. Yeah. And my voice hasn't wavered or changed because it's always been just me. So to that end, I have a little bit of an advantage where you ask me any Whole30 question and it's going to sound the same, whether it was 10 years ago or now for the most part, because it's always been just the same person.
Sure.
I think we think about this aspect of building community. Like everyone wants to now build a community around their brand or around their product. And people think about the idea of building a community in terms of like, what can I do for the community and what will the community do for me? But I think one of the benchmarks of Whole30 and one of the reasons I think our community is so impactful is that the community supports each other. We're now at the place where like, I don't have to intervene in the community. They're answering each other's questions, they're offering each other support and resources, they're connecting on their own. And that I think is the hallmark of like a successful community, is not just can they function with me, but are they like standalone, succeeding on their own?
Yeah, and that's why Whole30 is a movement. Yeah. Right? Like people are challenging themselves, challenging their peers. You tapped into almost a very human element, right? This need to kind of, I don't know, change ourselves, better ourselves, but it's hard to do it alone.
Yes, it is really hard to do it alone. And I think despite social media where we feel like we're so connected right now, we feel more disconnected than ever. People are, lonely, people feel isolated. Social media is often a place where people compare and feel like they're coming up short. They feel unworthy.
Yeah.
So as much as you can personalize those engagements and those interactions, I think you can take advantage of the online space, which lets you connect with so many more people than you normally would if you just had a brick and mortar. But the more you can personalize those conversations, whether it be through an authentic voice or just engaging in one-on-one conversation, whether it be in the comments or in the DMs or responding to questions, I think that's where you can find kind of the happy balance.
Yeah. Do you find that maybe not anymore, but were you in the beginning constantly responding to like every comment that was coming in?
I respond to every comment now.
Still?
Every comment that I can. I get hundreds of DMs a day, and I don't go anywhere without someone saying, you always respond to my DM. You guys, customer service is happening in the DMs right now. It is happening in that one-on-one, in-person social engagement. And so, if someone is choosing to engage with you as a brand or as a company, they're leaving you a comment, they're leaving you a question, even just an excited, if you don't have someone on there who is responding to almost every single one. We have a practice at Whole30 where every social media comment gets a tap, whether it's a like or a comment back or a good job. It doesn't necessarily have to be uber personal. And I'm in my own DMs by myself every single day. Yeah, that's an incredibly important part of building that trust and loyalty.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. Because if I'm leaving a comment on something and then you're liking it back or whatever, it's like I'm part of it.
Yes.
That I'm part of it with you.
Yeah, people don't want to connect with a nameless, faceless brand unless you're like Wendy's on Twitter. Like Wendy's is crushing it on Twitter. Everyone wants Wendy's to tweet back at them. But unless you're doing it at that level, they want to connect with like a real human being. So the more you can share your story, I talk about my story so freely because while I've never had a problem with food in terms of like food addiction or even my weight, food and drugs are not that different from a psychological perspective. And so in sharing my story, it lets people know that I have empathy and that I have some background and that I have some kind of slate of experience where I can connect with them.
Yeah. I mean, I know for myself personally, food is a very sensitive subject. And I think in your sharing of your own personal story, right, it takes something that can be, a little uncomfortable, and it just makes it okay.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about, is taking the things that people don't normally want to talk about, that somehow they find embarrassing or guilty or shameful, and there's a lot of that in the food-related space, and just bringing it out and talking about it. I've talked about things on social media that I've definitely endured a vulnerability hangover after, but in destigmatizing it and bringing it up, I have a platform and I have a voice, and if I can use my voice, then I will empower others to use theirs as well. And that's really what you want to do with your community, is you want to empower them.
Yeah. And that's, a lot of the talks today, there was a theme of, customer-centric.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we should care about what our customers think, what they say, because in essence, they're our marketing and sales channel, right? Like, if someone is happy with what we're offering, software, whatever it is, the platforms that are out there for people to communicate their likes or dislikes are so plentiful that they easily can.
Yes.
And so if we're not responding to our customers, if we're not engaging with them, if we're not listening to them, well, then we're just failing.
Yeah, you're cutting them out of the equation. And the thing about social media and online forums and Yelp reviews and stuff is that people are far more likely to go online and leave a negative review than they are a positive one. Because if everything's working great in your life, you don't feel the need to talk about it. Oh, my curling iron worked perfectly this morning. Like, nobody's going to leave that review. But when you have a problem, they're out there. So encouraging people to want to share their good experience is really, really important. And then how you publicly handle some of those negative comments in the community can also be vitally important to how you're perceived as a brand.
Yeah. Have you, how do you handle any negative kind of comments that have come in?
With a lot of empathy and a lot of compassion, and sometimes sitting on my hands for 24 hours before I share a response. One of the things I've come to realize is that in a lot of cases, and I would imagine it's pretty similar in terms of like tech as it is with food, most of the time people come to me and they're just like anxious. They're a little bit anxious about it. They're nervous. They're scared. When my mom has an issue with her computer or her phone, she's all caps, like leaving the most angry message ever, but it's just because she's really freaked out.
Sure.
So understanding that people coming to you may just be really nervous about something or maybe very unfamiliar with like online etiquette is a really great way to approach it. We almost never delete comments or delete like bad, negative things. I would rather leave them up unless it violates our, community guidelines. I'd rather leave them up and address them. But addressing with a lot of empathy and a lot of compassion. Over-delivering is something that we've believed in since day one. I'm going to fix your problem, and then I'm going to give you 72 other things that will make you so happy that you will say, like, well, this was problematic, but I'm going to keep going back because they did such a good job with it. We've refunded people for things that they didn't even buy from us because they associate the product with Whole30, and if I can make them happy and understand that someone actually really does care about them in this journey, that's way more important to me than the $40 I just shelled out.
That's amazing. Yeah. And that also, that is what builds trust. Yeah. Right? That's what builds trust between all of us that may attempt the Whole30. And that's really important. In the video that we watched, the HubSpot G2 video, Brian Halligan said, we're in a crisis of trust. We don't know who to trust. We don't know what to trust. And as sales and marketing people, how do you even, that's such a barrier, such a strong barrier that you have to break through, because no one wants to hear someone say oh yeah, I have the best, whatever, fitness plan or whatever it is, and you should listen to me because I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. We're also skeptical. Yeah, we are, because everyone on social media at this point is an expert in everything. You don't know who has the street cred and who has the experience and who just, is out there kind of talking about it. So I think in the world of having so many choices, people get very, very overwhelmed. And what they want, what I want, is just to have one site or one source that I trust and I just go back to over and over. So when I book a hotel, I use booking.com only, exclusively, because I've always gotten great deals from them. Their customer service has been great. I will never look anywhere else. I'll never look on the other sites because that's my experience with booking. And I think people want to develop that relationship with a variety of companies, and I think you can be that person. But in order to be that person, you can't constantly be trying to sell them stuff. Right. You only have so much real estate or so much capital in your social media and your connection with your customers to be pitching them things. So the bulk of things has to be value added. It has to be providing a service. It has to be giving your content away for free. It helping them solve a pain point. And if you do enough of that, you'll eventually get to, hopefully, the place where we got to, which is people saying, I'll buy anything you write. I haven't done a Whole30 in years, but I'm going to buy your next book because I really love the program and I believe in it, and I will support whatever you do. And that's the dream, really. Oh, totally. That's, in making a brand or a company, if you get to a point where people are just that brand recognition, oh yeah, no, Like Whole30, got it, cool.
Yeah.
And now, I think if I have this correct, like there are food items in grocery stores that have Whole30 stickers on them.
Yeah.
It's companies are piggybacking on your trust that you've built with your community to kind of build trust themselves.
But that was a win. That's a win-win-win. I probably turn down 9 out of every 10 partnership requests I get because they are not in service of my community. So if you're going to come and you want your Whole30 approved sticker on your product, I need to know that you understand the program. I need to know that you believe in the spirit and intention and philosophy, not just in the brand. I need to know that you're going to be supportive of my community, as supportive as we are going to be of yours, and it has to be a true partnership. And in the early days, it was really hard. I turned down some very lucrative potential partnerships that I think would have been, catapulted us into the spotlight and made us a lot of money, but it wasn't in service of the community.
Yeah, it sounds like you really hold true to certain ethics, right? Certain values.
I have a very technical metric I use if I can try to explain it. I ask myself, does this feel gross?
Okay.
It's what I've always used to decide whether or not a partnership is right, a sponsored content is right, even to go so far as a social media post. I think to myself, when I post this, does it feel at all gross? Does it feel at all like I'm taking advantage of my community? Like I'm, I guess, compromising my integrity for this product or service? And I've gone the wrong way a few times.
Yeah.
And had to reel it back and either just never do that again, or once or twice I've had to really eat it and apologize. But I've also done that very transparently and very authentically, and I think because of that, people have been pretty forgiving.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole act of being honest with people is just a very difficult thing to do in general, right? And being vulnerable and all these things I don't know if anyone's seen the Brene Brown special, but that idea of kind of being in the ring with people and being vulnerable and open. And okay, fine, we might sell or market software, but we're doing it to people, right? We're all real individuals. And if we can communicate in ways that are real and vulnerable and honest and true, that's huge.
Because you're not just selling market software. You are streamlining their day. You are solving a pain point. You are growing their business. And if you're thinking about it from that perspective, it becomes very easy to be empathetic and to connect and put yourself in their shoes and remember that, for them, this is an actual relationship that you're building and you are in service of them. And so then the question becomes, how can we be of better service? How can we listen between the lines?
Yeah.
The co-founder of Zoom was talking about reading every positive review and every negative review, and I'm in the comments listening to what isn't a review. I'm listening to people just talking about how their day is going and how their Whole30 is going and what went well and what didn't go well, and listening and thinking to myself, is there a resource I can create that would help this person? Is there, could we streamline the website such that this was a little bit easier to find? Can I jump in and direct them to something that they may not know about? Can I write a whole book? That's what my whole next book is about, is solving a pain point from people who happen to mention over and over again that the Whole30 was great and changed their life, but they still found it hard to socialize. So those reading between the lines and really getting to know your customers can be incredibly valuable, both from a business perspective, but also from that relationship perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about listening.
Yeah.
So what's next with Whole30? You just mentioned there's a book.
Yeah, we have a book coming out October 15th that's all about everyday social occasions you might encounter on the Whole30. In my podcast, I'm talking about things that are tangential to Whole30, but not specifically Whole30 related. So a lot of self-help things, addiction and recovery, things on relationships, single parenting. I'm sharing kind of stories from my own life because, again, I think the more I can connect with people and keep them engaged in the program after their Whole30 is over. So, you sell them the software or you sell them your service, but how can you keep them in your community after they're gone? Right. Talking to each other, helping each other with answering questions or providing, resources. And that's something I'm always thinking about. So I'm doing that through the podcast. We've got a network of Whole30 certified coaches now all across the country and across the globe who are bringing that conversation back to the in-person social connection. So as much as our businesses have been allowed to grow online and it's been incredibly helpful, people are still starved for this kind of connection, this in person where you can actually speak and ask questions and actually connect with a human being. So we're trying to facilitate that as well.
Yeah, that's kind of like us having this little mini gathering here with everyone,
Yeah, there's people talk about word of mouth, and I think even today we all recognize that word of mouth is still your best sales tactic, right? Sure. If you hear from somebody else that this product was amazing and you hear about the experience, you're far more likely to buy it. We all assume that most word of mouth happens online on social media. If I were to ask you what percentage, most people say like, oh, it's got to be 50 or 60 or 70%. It's like 7% of word of mouth is happening online, according to a book I recently read by a guy who is a professor at the Wharton School of Business. 7%. We spend 8 times as much time offline as we do online. So the question I'm asking myself now is, given that the bulk of my engagement with Whole30ers is online and will always be online, how do we bring some of that one-on-one connection to the online experience? And that's why I'm in the DMs. That's why I'm in the comments. That's why, our partners have a telephone line that you can call if you have problems with your meal planning service, and you can talk to a real human being.
Yeah.
How much of that can you bring into the online experience? Because through that, I feel like you can grow the product, grow your reputation, grow your trust, and by default, grow the community.
Yeah. And it's personalizing, right? So like in marketing and sales, it's how can we be more targeted? How can we personalize the message and not be like, it's not a snippet of like copy where I just put someone's name in so it feels like, oh yeah, it's personalized. No, it's paying attention and listening and caring and all those things that like we are taught to do growing up. But then we kind of get into like work business mode and we forget a little bit.
If I tweet at a company, if I tweet at Delta or tweet at Lululemon and I get a response back from a real human being that's personalized to me where they sign off with their name, that makes me feel really special.
Yeah.
I like that, and now I'm an advocate for that company. I'm an advocate for the brand. I have a warmer feeling about that brand, and I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, those are big takeaways. Like, those are really impactful things that we can do in our day-to-day jobs. That make us even better in building our own communities.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, so we talked about like the importance of authenticity, of personalization. Is there any other kind of little snippets of wonderful knowledge that you have in your experience in building your own community and really creating this movement where like almost all of us have attempted Whole30 or heard of it?
I mean, I think just remember that we're like a 10-year overnight success. So all of this takes a very, very long time. That relationship takes a long time to build, and the listening. I'm a huge fan, again, of giving things away for free. The Whole30 is available for free on the website. The entire program, tons of resources, the forum, a newsletter. Like, you don't have to buy a single thing to do the Whole30, and it will always be like that.
Yeah.
And I think that is a huge kind of goodwill motivator to the community. So I think that's really important. But again, I just go back to this idea of people want to connect with a person, not necessarily a company. And as much as you can personalize these interactions, bring some of that kind of in-person social experience and that one-on-one in.
Yeah.
And just remember, as you're kind of going about your day, that sometimes the best sales and marketing tactics are not necessarily the right thing for your community in that moment. Not that they won't ever be. But for a very long time, for example, we didn't have any advertising on our website at all. For years, we didn't have advertising. And people said we were bananas because we had millions of visitors every single month. And we just didn't want to do it. We didn't want that to be your experience when you came to our website. And now we do.
Right.
But we do now because people are so incredibly accepting of it because we gave them such a long time without it, without having to endure it. So
you built that level of trust.
Yeah, we did. And we take it very, very seriously. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, I'm excited to see where Whole30 continues to go from there. And Melissa will be here engaging with us. If you guys have any questions for her, you can come up and say hi and chit chat. And this was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Thank you.